But let me just encourage you, when it comes to investing, more often than not, boring is beautiful. Welcome back to Invested in You, brought to you by Community First Investment Group. We're here to help you take the next step in your financial journey, no matter where you're starting from. I'm your host, Nate Hastow. We're here to break down important financial topics in a way that's clear, approachable, and actionable. There's a lot of information and misinformation out there when it comes to investing. Today, we'll tackle some of the most common myths we hear and set the record straight to help you move forward with confidence. So our topic today is investment myths debunked. So let's start with what is this and why is it so common? Well, first and foremost, the media does a great job of sensationalizing anything. Anything you put through the media filter becomes the biggest deal ever. Now, personally, I believe this is really because clicks have become more important than facts nowadays. There's the term clickbait that is a real thing. Not only with AI now being able to generate believable enough images to go along with what the headline says, but with the commitment to facts and reporting being not nearly what it used to be. This becomes a real challenge out there for every individual to really understand where their sources are coming from and if it's to be believed or not. But the fact is that fear and playing on fear is a real tactic for many folks in the marketing spaces nowadays. We'll say marketing and sales. I probably get 2 to 3 reels or TikToks on a monthly basis from friends, colleagues, clients that are financial related in some aspect. And more often than not, the question coming along with it is this real? Does this work? Can I believe this? And on average, my answer tends to be no, it's not real, or it's a half truth. And if you wait till the end of that reel or TikTok, you get the actual sales pitch, which is what they're building up to. It's creating fear and misinformation to sell a product or a service. Myths are very common nowadays and can lead to poor financial decisions as well as missed opportunities. But if you really identify what the underpinning feeling is that these individuals and corporations in some cases are trying to create, it's playing on fear. And it could be fear of loss, it could be FOMO, fear of missing out. But let me just encourage you, when it comes to investing, more often than not, boring is beautiful. And I want to tackle a few of these investment myths today here. We've got 6 different common myths that we hear. I'm sure there are more, but we're going to hit on 6 of them today. The first one is investing is only for the wealthy. And the reality, guys, is almost anyone can invest nowadays. Now, decades and decades ago, in a world where you didn't have things like ETFs and mutual funds or even fractional shares of stocks accessible to people, it was true. You may have to have some built-in wealth in order to get started. Now, having enough cash that is disposable, that you could invest into individual stocks and have enough individual stocks to actually be diversified would be a challenge. And even today is a challenge for many people who are just getting started. But the beauty of an ETF or a mutual fund is that you have access to a either partially or fully diversified portfolio with $25 to $100. Now, some mutual funds require you put in $250, some require $1,000, but all of those are relatively low thresholds to begin investing in the first place. So I would say investing is no longer only for the wealthy. In fact, it's a requirement for everyone nowadays. You need to invest in some capacity to really have a shot long term at having choices. Myth number 2, you need to be a stock picking genius. Now, a portion of this we answered with myth number 1, right? You can invest in things that are not just individual stocks nowadays. But what we typically tell clients is, unless you're working with a relatively large portfolio, selecting individual stocks is probably not the most efficient and effective way to go about executing an investment strategy. Small portions of a portfolio in individual stocks is totally fine, but if you're just getting started, I would guide you away from individual stocks to begin with. You can certainly work your way there, but there are less volatile and more diversified ways to invest, especially if you just don't have investment experience to begin with. Myth number 3, the stock market is too risky. Well, the reality is that the stock market is not gambling. And while you can't eliminate risk when you're investing in the stock market, you can manage risk. Took some time to look at S&P 500 returns over the last several decades. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the S&P 500 is a index. It's essentially a list of the top 500 publicly traded companies in the US at any given time. It does change on a year-over-year basis, so it's not static. But if we look at 10 periods of time, 10-year returns with the S&P 500, there is a 94% chance that if you invest in the S&P 500, which this is not a recommendation to invest in, this is just an index that is a good way for us to get a gauge on the market. But if you're invested in the market over 10 years, you have a 94% chance of making positive returns over a decade. Now, to use the gambling analogy, if you can show me a slot machine that is going to pay me out in a positive way 94% of the time, I'll show you a casino that will not be in business for very long. So there is definitely a difference between diversified investing and gambling. Myth number 4, you should pull out of the stock market when things get bad. Now, the reality is no one knows how to time the market 100% of the time. And that's really what this question is can I get out of the stock market to avoid the losses while only being present for the gains, right? The challenge that gets presented if we try to bow out of the stock market when things are dropping, especially when we have decades and decades to go. So really focusing on folks who have longer time horizons in the market, but really for everyone here. So following drawdowns in the market, rallies tend to be the next step that occurs. And if you look at any of the stats, missing the 2 to 3 best days in the market each year can create a flat or even a negative return for someone who isn't staying invested. So the challenge here is if you're going to get out when the market's down, when do you get back in? And if you're going to do that, have you already lost too much, or have you not waited an appropriate amount of time to get back into the market? So market timing is not something that we recommend, especially for folks who aren't spending all day long watching. And truly, most people have full-time jobs. So this is not probably the best strategy for them to employ. So I would avoid that. Myth number 5, past performance guarantees future results. Well, if you've ever listened to any sort of investment advertising ever, you'll know that we almost always will say something to the tune of past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Now, where does this really apply, right? Because if it's just a thing that we say and not something that we can describe here, then what does that really mean? So one of the ways that I see this employed or played out in real time is that people are typically looking at concentrated positions when they're in a position where past performance is not a good illustration of future returns. So this is what I mean by that. If we're looking at a stock that had a rally, now sometimes these can almost feel like they're manipulated a little bit. Other times this can just be a perfect storm of everything coming together and people feeling like an individual company is poised for success, right? But concentrated positions like individual stocks or even sector funds are more likely to not have a rhyme or reason, it may seem, to follow what they've done in the past. If you're going more broad market, the broad market is a better indication typically of similar types of returns in that scenario, not necessarily the exact same returns moving forward that they've experienced in the past. Myth number 6, I'm too young or too old to invest. The reality is it's never too early, it's never too late. Now, starting earlier is better, but starting late doesn't mean that you have no shot for success. Investing is not a binary on or off scenario. You can go very aggressive, you can go very conservative, and everything in between. But it's really up to the advisor that you're working with to spend time with you to determine what is the right type of risk level for you. So how do we actually put this advice into practice, or how do we verify how to actually maneuver all these different myths that exist? Um, Lesson number one, and everyone's heard this before: if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. Now, I would encourage people, if it sounds good, that does not mean that it can't be true. It just means that you need to ask more questions. So at the end of the day, asking questions, making sure you understand how something that might seem like a really good opportunity is a really good opportunity, or if it isn't, is really good. So you want to use some discernment there. Um, Avoid items typically that promise guaranteed results. That should be a red flag when you hear the word guarantees. However, there are products that exist that do guarantee outcomes. Those products come with costs. So if think of it this way, there's always a give and take. If you're going to get guaranteed results, then there's going to be some likely additional cost that comes along with that. Now, that doesn't apply for every single product or every single service, but just again, be discerning, be curious, um, be cautious when it comes to investing. I think it really does matter that you take that extra time to do due diligence. Um, as advisors, what do we do to help people cut through all the noise? I do think it's the personalized investment strategies as well as the personalized relationships that make a big difference here. Not every product is suitable for every person. Um, there are some, as we discuss, historic experience, temperament with clients that we just know as advisors are not a great fit. That doesn't mean that we don't bring those products up to explain how they function. In many cases, I'll bring up a product that I know isn't a good fit for a client to explain how we think about suitability. And that's just as an example. But at the end of the day, it does need to be a personalized experience for every single person. As we wrap up the episode today, we do have a question from a listener as well. Today's question is: I'm 28 with one child. My wife and I have some debt from student loans and medical bills. Should I start investing now or wait until most of my debt is paid off? Now, again, I probably need more context to give true advice here, but here are a few things to think about. Item number one, I would strongly consider what the current debt interest rates are on student loans and medical debt. Again, without having intimate knowledge of this, my guess is the student loan debt, if it's federal, is relatively manageable. We're talking single digits as far as interest rates are concerned here. The medical debt probably is at zero if it's on some sort of a payment plan. So it's not the interest that you're worried about likely on either of these scenarios. It's more about cash flow. How much needs to be allocated each month to the student loans, to the medical debt, in order to make sure that you're making progress, because no one wants to be in debt forever. But how much of that is really eating into your financial opportunity for investing? Point two, what I would likely consider, again, I don't know all of the intimate details here, but what I would consider is if there is some sort of a employer plan that is accessible for this individual, especially if there's some sort of a matching or profit share system set up, I would strongly consider making retirement contributions towards this. At 28, the amount of multiplying factors that we're working with here with compound interest for retirement savings is massive. It's very likely that those multipliers are favorable compared to relatively low interest debt for student and medical debt. But the other aspect that makes me say 401k or retirement plan at an employer may be a good option here is there are oftentimes options for things like 401k loans that may not be as easily available through things like IRAs and things of that nature. So you can likely get some tax benefits from contributing to your employer's plan. You may be able to double up your money or increase your money at the very least with some sort of a match or profit share. And if your plan allows it, a 401k loan could be an okay backdrop to say, I'm going to invest knowing that there is a way for me to get to this in a tax favored way if the debt continues to pile up or if something else comes along. Now, I strongly encourage anyone before you start contributing large amounts of money to any sort of an investment, especially retirement planning, at 28, for instance, make sure you have a strong emergency fund in place. The cash on hand is a big deal, and it will keep you from having to do things like 401k loans or distributions, which are not the ideal way to go about managing retirement distributions. Closing thoughts here today. I want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Invested in You, brought to you by Community First Investment Group. Here for your now, here for your future. We hope today's episode cleared up some rumors we often hear. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and if you're ready to take the next step in your investing journey, or just have a few questions, visit cfigadvisors.com to connect with our team. We'll see you on the next episode, Insurance Planning 101. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance products are offered through LPL or its licensed affiliates. Community First Bank and Community First Investment Group are not registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor. Registered representatives of LPL offer products and services using Community First Investment Group and may also be employees of Community First Bank. These products and services are being offered through LPL or its affiliates, which are separate entities from and not affiliates of Community First Bank or Community First Investment Group. Securities and insurance offered through LPL or its affiliates are not FDIC insured by FDIC or any other government agency, not bank guaranteed, not bank deposits or obligations, may lose value. There is no assurance that techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of these strategies. Investments involve risk, include possible loss of principal. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly.